At this point, let's look at learning in government schools versus learning in high income elite schools or private schools, and see if they are different in some ways, or what insights we get in the type of learning in the different types of schools. One of the characteristics that we see is that rote learning tends to be a common feature across the range of schools, and this is a characteristic, this is something that we see across these types of schools. And what do we mean by rote learning? Let me spend some time on that. Some people think that rote learning is memorization, that is, children memorize something and they learn that, but it's not just that. And if it were just memorization by itself is not bad. Rote learning is when children learn mechanically without understanding the core ideas behind what they are learning. So, for example, if I learn a definition of something, it could be pressure or it could be a definition of a plateau in geography. If I learn that definition, I know the words in the definition and I am able to write it in an exam, and I also feel that once I have written those words in the exam, I am given credit for it. But I don't really understand what I was saying at all. I did not understand this definition or the procedure, but I know how to follow it mechanically. Now this is rote learning. So it's not just memorization, which is not bad, but it is memorization without understanding the core idea behind the concept that we are trying to learn. And rote learning is seen both in our public schools or the government schools, as well as in our private elite schools. And this is something that we need to recognize and understand when we are talking about learning. The difference between learning in the government schools and the elite schools is that the very basics that we expect children to know, which is basic skills like reading, like basic mathematical skills, arithmetic skills, basic critical thinking, a lot of studies show that even these are not learnt well by in the government schools. So, for example, Pratham's Asar showed that, and shows literally every year, that children in grade 5 are not able to read at a grade 2 level. There is an international test called PISA that we will talk about more on the assessment section, which kind of showed again that quality of learning, what children were actually able to do in our government schools, was way below what we would expect. So we see that in the government schools, learning is at a point where children actually move from grade to grade, but they are not acquiring certain basic skills that virtually everybody would agree they should even by grade 3 or 4. So that is the challenge there. When we go to the elite schools, the elite private schools, here we do not find that children are not able to read or not able to do basic math. No, they actually acquire those basic skills quite well. But we do find that some of the deeper learning, the understanding, the ability to apply what they have learned, again, like I said, I am able to give the definition, but have I understood what that means? This is often missing, or it is not acquired well. And there have been some amazing studies that kind of show this in a pretty shocking way. And I am going to actually take one or two examples of this to show you what I mean. So if we go back to the example of the government school, you can see some examples where in one case, if you ask children in grade 5 to write a sentence about a picture, you find that less than 50% of grade 5 children in this study and studies like this were able to write something meaningful on that picture. So that was the thing. Among those who wrote sentences, there were issues of whether those sentences were correctly framed, written, and kind of covering what was there in the picture. But 50% of children were not even able to write the sentence. And similarly, we find examples in mathematics of similar gaps. So this is the learning situation, if I may say, in the government schools. Moving to the private schools, I'm going to actually take an example to illustrate what I mean by this kind of a learning gap where children are able to do something mechanically but are not understanding the concept involved. So if you look at this picture, you find that it looks like the picture asks for the length of the pencil, and there is a ruler and there's a pencil next to it. It looks like a straightforward question, and this is asked to children in grade 4. And when you ask teachers say this is an easy question, most children will be able to answer it. But that's not the case. and you find that though we can see that the answer to the question is that the pencil is 5 centimeters long, a lot of children, more than 70% of children, actually answer that the pencil is 6 centimeters long. And this comes as a surprise to most people. And the even more surprising part is that after we tell teachers this, if you tell teachers that children answer in this way, and we try to understand why children are answering 6 to this question, that turns out to be even more of a mystery. And if you try this with teachers, you will find that even teachers who are teaching grade 4 are not able to guess or estimate why children may be answering in this way. And it actually turns out that children answer 6 to this because they have not really understood the concept of measurement, but they count the points, and they count the points that the pencil is covering on the scale, which is not the concept of measurement at all. And it actually means that if children had to perform a task where they had to measure out a certain length, they would not be able to do it correctly. So it's quite a basic gap in learning, but it is found to be widespread. So this is an example where it is not so obvious. It's not like the situation in the government school where they're not able to read something. But, and this is just one example, there are a number of concepts across subjects, so it's not related to a particular subject, where the children are not understanding these concepts in the depth that one would expect. There have been studies on this. There was a study that we conducted and was published in India Today in 2006 and in other publications in 2010 and 11, and there are links to these which you can go and refer, where there are a number of examples of this showing the kind of gaps that children show. So that's the kind of difference we see across government schools and elite high fee schools, though in both cases we find that rote learning is prevalent and the situation really leaves something to be desired.